Thank you for joining me. This is the story of Maya, a woman who faces life's toughest challenges and learns the true power of choice and integrity. If you enjoy her journey, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Let's begin. Maya sat alone at a small corner table in a quiet cafe on a dreary Chicago morning. The soft clink of cups and the hum of low conversations around her barely registered in her mind. She was too consumed by the weight of her own thoughts. The past few days had been a blur of confusion and disbelief, a whirlwind that left her feeling disoriented and unsure of what came next. The hospital where she had worked for nearly 7 years had announced sudden layoffs. The news had come out of nowhere, hitting hard and fast, leaving no room for the kind of preparation Maya had hoped for. Now here she was, no longer a nurse, no longer part of the team she had dedicated herself to for so long. Her hands trembled slightly as she stirred the coffee, the bitter smell filling the air. She glanced down at the empty chair across from her, a reminder of how much had changed. Maya had always found purpose in her work, taking pride in her role as a nurse. But now, without her uniform, without the steady rhythm of hospital shifts, she felt adrift. Who was she without the title she had worn with such pride? The thought made her stomach turn. Rent was due in just a few days. Her mother's medical expenses were mounting, and every small bill seemed to scream at her from the kitchen counter, taunting her with its unrelenting demands. Her mother had been in and out of the hospital for months, her condition worsening slowly, and Maya had always been there to support her, to pick up the pieces when things got tough. Now, she didn't even know how she would make the next payment, let alone keep the roof over their heads. She let out a long sigh, trying to steady her breath, but the knot of anxiety in her chest only tightened. The world outside the cafe seemed to move on without her. People hurried down the street, going about their business, while she sat frozen, uncertain of where to go next. The sense of loss was suffocating. She missed the sense of purpose her job had given her. Without it, who was she really? Her fingers drummed anxiously on the edge of the cup, and the thought of her mother, vulnerable and reliant on her, made her stomach churn. How would she be able to provide for her now? How would she keep going? The world outside felt distant, indifferent to her plight. As she took another sip of her coffee, Maya caught a glimpse of something through the cafe's glass door. A man, ragged and disheveled, stood on the sidewalk. His clothes were tattered, his face unshaven, and he appeared to be shivering in the early morning cold. Maya's gaze lingered on him for a moment. There was something about him that struck her, something in his eyes that mirrored the same loneliness and vulnerability she had been feeling all morning. Her heart softened as she looked at him. She couldn't help it. The weight of her own struggles had made her more attuned to the struggles of others. With an impulsive decision, Maya stood up, walked to the door, and held it open. The man looked up at her, startled at first, and she smiled gently. "Would you like to come in? It's warm inside," she said softly, her voice carrying just enough kindness to break through his wariness. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded and walked inside. Maya led him to the table where she had been sitting, offering him a seat. He looked down at the table, unsure of what to do, but Maya gestured toward the menu. "I'll buy you something to eat," she said. "It's the least I can do." He looked at her in surprise, his eyes narrowing as if trying to gauge whether she was genuine. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice hoarse, but the sincerity in his words made Maya's heart ache. They sat in silence for a while, both unsure of what to say. Maya ordered a sandwich and a coffee for him, all the while trying to ignore the nagging voice in her head that reminded her of how tight her own budget was. Still, she couldn't ignore the pull of empathy that urged her to do something, anything, to ease his burden, even if just for a moment. She watched as he slowly ate, his hands shaking slightly as he lifted the sandwich to his mouth. They exchanged a few words, small talk about the weather and the state of the city, but as the minutes passed, the conversation shifted. "I used to have a family," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "But life didn't turn out the way I thought it would. Things went south, and I ended up here." Maya listened, but she didn't press him for details. There was a quiet dignity about him, despite his rough appearance, and she found herself deeply moved by his words. In that moment, she saw beyond his ragged exterior. She saw a person who had once had dreams, once had hope, but had been beaten down by circumstances. She understood that feeling all too well. "Life is hard," she said quietly, more to herself than to him. "But you can't give up on hope." He looked up at her, his expression softening. "I don't know how you do it," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "You still have hope, even when everything's falling apart?" Maya didn't have an answer to that. How could she? But she nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I'm trying." As they sat in that quiet cafe sharing a fleeting moment of connection, Maya realized something. Despite her own hardships, despite the crushing uncertainty she faced, she had something to give. She had compassion, and in a world that often felt cold and indifferent, that small act of kindness, inviting a stranger in from the cold, had reignited a tiny spark of purpose within her. Little did she know, that simple act would change her life forever. The day passed in a haze for Maya. The weight of the morning still lingered in her thoughts, but something about the encounter with Gabriel, the homeless man, left her feeling oddly uplifted. It was a small, fleeting moment of human connection that made the world feel just a little less cold, a little more bearable. For the first time in days, she didn't feel completely lost. Maybe, just maybe, there was a glimmer of hope left. As the day wore on, Maya found herself caught between her responsibilities and the weight of the offer she had made to Gabriel. She had given him the warmth of her company, a small gesture that felt almost insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Yet it had felt meaningful, both to her and to him. That evening, as she prepared dinner for herself and her mother, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Startled, she wiped her hands on the dish towel and hurried to answer it. When she opened the door, her jaw nearly dropped. Standing there was Gabriel, but he wasn't the disheveled man she had met earlier. Instead, he was clean-shaven, dressed in a sharp suit, his hair neatly combed. His transformation was so dramatic that for a moment Maya didn't recognize him. Hi," she said, unsure of how to react. Gabriel smiled warmly. "I know this might be a bit of a surprise, Maya. I wanted to come by and thank you for what you did earlier. You were kind to me when you didn't have to be, and I appreciate it more than you know." Maya stood there, frozen for a moment. This was the same man who had sat at her table, eating a sandwich and sharing his story. But now, he seemed like a completely different person. "I didn't do anything special," she said, still trying to process what was happening. "I just offered you a meal." Gabriel's eyes twinkled with something Maya couldn't quite place. "To me, it was more than that. I've been testing the kindness of others, Maya. You stood out." He hesitated, looking around the modest apartment before continuing. "I've been looking for someone like you. Someone with real empathy, real heart." Maya blinked, unsure of where this conversation was headed. "What are you talking about?" "I run a foundation," Gabriel explained. "A charity focused on helping those in need. But it's more than that. It's about making a real, lasting impact, and I think you have the potential to help lead it." His words were smooth, practiced, but there was a sincerity behind them that made Maya hesitate. "I'd like to offer you a position, working with me, helping to guide the initiatives of my foundation. A job that could change everything for you." Maya was stunned. This couldn't be real. The same man who had been homeless just hours ago was now offering her a job at some mysterious foundation? She was skeptical, wary, and not at all sure what to make of it. I don't know," she said, her voice trailing off as she glanced at her mother, who was sitting at the kitchen table. This seemed too good to be true. Could she really trust this man? Or was there something he wasn't telling her? Gabriel, sensing her hesitation, gave her a reassuring smile. "Take your time. But I'll tell you this, opportunities like this don't come around often. It could change your life, Maya. Think about it." As he turned and walked away, Maya stood there, her mind racing. Was this truly a chance for a new beginning, or was there something darker at play? Her journey was only beginning, and already she could feel the weight of the decision before her. The night passed slowly for Maya, her mind whirling with questions. Gabriel's sudden appearance and his cryptic offer had left her unsettled. She couldn't shake the image of the clean-shaven, well-dressed man, a far cry from the disheveled figure she had met earlier. Something about the entire situation felt surreal, like a dream or a trap waiting to close in on her. She didn't sleep well that night. Her thoughts kept spiraling, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw Gabriel's warm smile and the way he had spoken about his foundation. The offer seemed too perfect, too sudden, and yet, part of her couldn't deny that it was tempting. Maya needed something, anything, that could pull her out of the mess she was in. But could she trust him? Could she trust this strange man who had turned up out of nowhere, offering her a chance at a new life? The next morning, the sound of a car engine rumbling outside jerked Maya awake. She groggily glanced at the clock, 8:30 a.m. She had no plans today other than to look for work. But as she rubbed her eyes, the deep hum of the engine continued. It was persistent, unlike the usual sounds of passing cars. Confused and still foggy from lack of sleep, Maya walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. Her breath caught in her throat as she saw a sleek black limousine parked in front of her apartment. The polished chrome glinted in the early morning sun. What in the world? Maya's heart raced as she looked closer. There was no mistaking it. The same man from the cafe, Gabriel, was seated inside the car, a slight smile playing on his lips as he looked up at her window. His transformation was complete, the image of a businessman, not a homeless man at all. Her stomach churned as she felt her palms grow clammy. What was going on? The limousine, the sudden appearance. Was this a joke? A trick? Still unsure of what to do, Maya found herself drawn to the door. She grabbed her coat in a daze, her thoughts scattered and uncertain. She stepped outside cautiously, the cool air of the morning biting at her skin. Gabriel was standing outside the limo now, the chauffeur waiting silently by the door. "Maya," Gabriel said, his voice calm and warm, as though he hadn't just appeared out of nowhere. "I know this is a bit unexpected, but I wanted to speak with you again. Please, come with me." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. The last thing she wanted was to get into that car with him, to follow this strange path he had set out before her. But something in Gabriel's eyes, something in his demeanor, pulled her forward against her better judgment. She hesitated for a long moment, her heart racing, but then her curiosity got the best of her. Reluctantly, she stepped toward the open door of the limousine, her hand trembling as she grasped the handle. Gabriel smiled softly as she climbed inside, and the door was closed behind her. The interior was immaculate, soft leather seats and an expensive scent that lingered in the air. Gabriel sat across from her, his posture relaxed but focused. "This is surreal," Maya muttered, glancing around the limo, still feeling the weight of disbelief. "I understand how this all seems," Gabriel said, his voice steady. "But I want to make things clear. I didn't come here to trick you, Maya. You showed me something yesterday, something rare. It's not just about helping others. It's about being true to yourself. I can see that in you. I've been looking for someone like you to help lead my foundation, and I believe you have what it takes." His words were smooth, but Maya felt a nagging unease deep in her gut. Was she being swept into something she didn't fully understand? Gabriel continued, oblivious to her doubts. "This foundation, Maya, isn't just any charity. It's a project that could change the lives of countless people, and it needs someone who can see beyond the surface, someone with empathy, who understands what it's like to struggle." He paused, locking eyes with her. "You've been tested, just like me. That's why you're the right person for this job." Maya stared at him, trying to process everything. Her breath was shallow, her mind a whirlwind of questions. How could she trust him after everything? Was this really a chance to change her life, or was it a trap? Before she could respond, the car began to move, gliding silently through the streets. Maya felt like she was in a dream, caught between reality and some strange parallel universe. What was happening? The limousine finally came to a stop in front of a tall, glass building. It stood in stark contrast to the small apartment and the world Maya had known for so long. The building gleamed with the reflection of the morning sun, the facade polished and pristine. It looked like the kind of place where dreams were made or destroyed. Maya followed Gabriel inside, her footsteps echoing in the marble lobby as they walked toward the elevator. She couldn't help but feel small in this pristine environment, like a fish out of water. The lobby was filled with sleek, modern furniture, and a few well-dressed people moved about, all of them looking important and purposeful. As they entered the elevator, Gabriel pressed the button for the top floor, where his office was located. Maya stood silently beside him, her mind swirling with uncertainty. She hadn't planned for this. She hadn't planned for any of this. When the elevator doors opened, they emerged into an expansive office space, the walls lined with artwork and bookshelves, and a large window that overlooked the city. It was luxurious. Too luxurious. Maya couldn't help but feel out of place. Gabriel gave her a brief tour, introducing her to the staff and pointing out various rooms dedicated to different initiatives his foundation was working on. Everything was sleek and organized, filled with high-tech equipment and polished professionalism. Maya was overwhelmed, to say the least. She had never imagined a world like this. Her life had been so far removed from this kind of grandeur. Eventually, they reached his office, which was even more extravagant than the rest of the building. Gabriel motioned for Maya to sit across from his desk, a large, polished wood surface with a glass top. He sat down behind it, his demeanor confident but still warm. "I know this is a lot to take in," he said, his tone reassuring. "But I want you to understand what I'm offering you. I'm offering you an opportunity to work with me, to be a part of something bigger than anything you could imagine. You'll have a team, resources, everything you need to make a real difference." Maya blinked, struggling to digest it all. "But what would my role be?" she asked, trying to make sense of the vague offer. "What exactly would I be doing?" Gabriel leaned forward slightly, his gaze intense. "You'd be helping us design and implement new initiatives. I need someone with your skills, your empathy, your understanding of what it means to struggle. You'd be in charge of leading outreach programs, working directly with those we aim to help. It would give you a sense of purpose. And more importantly, it would give you security, financial security." Maya's stomach twisted at the mention of money. This was what she needed, wasn't it? A stable job, a chance to escape the constant pressure of living paycheck to paycheck. And yet she felt a deep, gnawing sense of doubt. Something about Gabriel's urgency, the way he was pushing her to make a decision so quickly, made her uncomfortable. "I'm not sure," Maya said slowly, her voice filled with hesitation. "This all seems too fast. I mean, how do I know I can trust you?" Gabriel's face hardened for just a moment, but he quickly masked it with a smile. "I understand your hesitation, but I'm offering you a chance to change your life, Maya. Don't let fear stand in your way." His words hung in the air, pressing down on her with an almost suffocating weight. Maya's mind raced, the pressure of her circumstances bearing down on her. This could be her escape. This could be the answer to everything. But something deep inside her screamed that she wasn't ready to make this decision just yet. "I need time," she said quietly, standing up from the chair. "I need to think about this." Gabriel's smile faltered, but he nodded. "Of course, but don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't wait forever." As she left the office, Maya felt a wave of relief and unease wash over her. She had made it clear that she wasn't ready to commit, but the weight of Gabriel's words lingered in her mind. What was she walking away from? And what might happen if she walked into this new world of wealth and power? The next few days were a blur of anxiety and indecision. Maya's phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Gabriel, each one more insistent than the last, urging her to make up her mind. But no matter how many times she read them, the words didn't comfort her. They made her feel more and more trapped. Then, one evening, as Maya returned from her part-time job, she was greeted with an unsettling sight. Her apartment door was slightly ajar, the lock looking as if it had been tampered with. A cold shiver ran down her spine as she slowly pushed the door open. The apartment was eerily quiet. She scanned the room, her heart pounding, and noticed that drawers were open and papers had been scattered across the floor. Nothing appeared to be missing, but the sense of violation was undeniable. Her breath caught in her throat. Had someone been looking for something? Had Gabriel sent someone to intimidate her? Fear gripped her chest, and for the first time since her mother had fallen ill, Maya felt truly unsafe in her own home. Later that night, as she sat in the living room trying to calm her nerves, she heard a soft rattle at the door. She hesitated, then walked over to find a small envelope slipped under it. Her hands shook as she bent down to pick it up and opened it. The message inside was short and chilling. "Stop refusing good opportunities. People like you need to know their place." Maya felt a surge of fear mixed with anger. Who was behind this? And what did they want from her? That night, sleep was impossible. The note gnawed at her thoughts. Was she truly in danger? Was this the price of defying Gabriel and his offer? The next morning, a fresh wave of uncertainty swept over her. She had no idea who was behind this, but she knew one thing for sure. Her life was about to change forever, one way or another. The days that followed felt like an endless spiral of pressure, each moment feeling heavier than the last. Maya's apartment, once a place of comfort, now felt like a battleground. She couldn't shake the unsettling memory of the tampered lock, nor could she forget the ominous note. Every creak of the floorboards, every sound outside the window made her jump. She constantly checked the locks on her door, her mind racing with worry. Maya's financial situation was worsening by the day. Her part-time job barely covered the rent and the bills, let alone her mother's medical expenses. The looming deadline for rent was fast approaching, and the bills kept piling up. With no other prospects on the horizon, her nerves were at their breaking point. And then there were the messages from Gabriel, relentless and urgent. He had given her space for a few days after her last meeting with him, but now the pressure was back, and it was more intense than ever. He called her twice in one day, his voice smooth and insistent as he urged her to accept the job. Maya, you know this is the best thing for you. Don't let fear hold you back. This opportunity won't wait forever, he repeated over and over, each time with more intensity. His promises were alluring, like a siren song. And yet, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than what he was telling her. She spent nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining every possible outcome of saying yes to his offer. What if this was the break she had been waiting for? What if accepting Gabriel's help could solve all her problems, provide for her mother, and lift the weight off her shoulders? The promise of security, of stability, was tantalizing. And yet, every time she thought about Gabriel's urgency, about the strange way he seemed to be pushing her toward the decision, she felt a nagging sense of distrust. But what was the alternative? She had no other job offers, and her savings were nearly gone. If she didn't accept Gabriel's offer soon, she might lose her apartment. The crushing weight of her circumstances seemed to mock her. She could almost hear her father's voice in her head, telling her to never compromise her integrity for money or security. Yet, her instincts were telling her that accepting Gabriel's offer would be a mistake. The sense of urgency, the pressure, the unspoken threats, all of it combined into a deep sense of unease. One evening, after a particularly long shift at the diner, Maya came home to find an unexpected visitor waiting for her. It was her landlord, standing at her door with a stern expression on his face. Maya's heart sank as she greeted him, knowing exactly what was coming. "Rent's due tomorrow, Maya. You're behind again. I can't keep giving you extensions," he said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Maya's throat tightened as she looked at him, barely able to speak. "I know. I'm doing my best. Please, give me a little more time." But the landlord shook his head. "You've had more than enough time. If I don't have the money tomorrow, I'll have to start the eviction process. I don't want to do that, but I have no choice." Maya's stomach twisted in a knot. This was it. The ultimatum. She had no choice but to find a solution, any solution. And the thought of Gabriel's offer lingered in her mind like a heavy weight. That night, she sat alone in her apartment, torn between the fear of making the wrong choice and the crushing reality of her circumstances. Her mind churned with anxiety. Was she going to have to sell out just to survive? What was more important, keeping her integrity intact or securing her future, no matter the cost? With the threat of eviction hanging over her, Maya couldn't afford to wait much longer. She was at her breaking point, emotionally and financially. The weight of her mother's health and the looming bills made her feel trapped, suffocating. But something in her, a small voice deep down, refused to let her cave in. She had spent years working hard to stay true to herself, and she wasn't about to lose that now, just for a quick fix. The following day, after another sleepless night, Maya found herself walking to a small local restaurant, her mind set. The diner where she worked part-time had limited hours, and the pay wasn't enough to keep up with everything. She needed something more, something steady. But not from Gabriel. Not from the trap he was trying to lure her into. The restaurant wasn't fancy, but it was clean and welcoming. She walked in, her nerves on edge, but her resolve firm. The manager, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a warm smile, looked up when she entered. "Can I help you, miss?" he asked. Maya took a deep breath. "I was wondering if you have any work available. I'm willing to do anything. Wash dishes, clean, wait tables. I just need something more steady." The manager eyed her for a moment before nodding. "We're always looking for good help. We can give you a trial shift to see how you do. Start today?" Maya's heart lifted with a sense of relief, but she didn't let herself show it. "Yes, I'll take it." That night, she found herself in the kitchen of the small restaurant, her hands submerged in hot water as she scrubbed dishes with diligence. The work was grueling, the hours long, but for the first time in days, Maya felt something resembling peace. There was no pressure to make a decision about Gabriel's offer, no looming threat of eviction. There was only the work, hard, honest, and meaningful. The following weeks were exhausting but satisfying. Maya picked up shifts whenever she could, working mornings, afternoons, and late into the evenings. Her hands grew calloused from washing dishes, and her back ached from standing for hours on end, but she felt a quiet pride in the work. Each day was a small victory. Each dollar she earned, a step toward securing a future that didn't require sacrificing her principles. She still hadn't heard from Gabriel, and that in itself was a relief. The pressure was gone. There was no more manipulative urgency, no more haunting messages or threats. Just the steady rhythm of her life, the satisfaction of earning what she had worked for. No shortcuts, no compromises. At night, when she came home and sat beside her mother, Maya felt a sense of accomplishment. She wasn't rich, and things weren't easy, but she had her dignity. And that, she realized, was worth more than any offer Gabriel could give her. Her mother, noticing the change in her, smiled and said, "You're doing good, Maya. I'm proud of you." Maya felt a lump form in her throat, her eyes filling with tears. She had taken a stand for herself, for her values, and for the life she wanted to build. And though the road was still long, for the first time in a long while, she was at peace. Months passed, and Maya's life settled into a new rhythm. She continued to work at the restaurant, and on the side, she began to take on occasional cleaning jobs. It wasn't glamorous, but it was enough to cover the bills, keep food on the table, and, most importantly, provide her mother with the care she needed. Maya had learned to appreciate the simple things in life. The small victories of hard work, the comfort of knowing she could take care of herself without compromising her integrity. Though the thought of Gabriel's offer still lingered in her mind occasionally, it no longer held the same weight. She had made her decision, and she was content with it. She had chosen a path of dignity, one where she could sleep at night knowing she had earned everything she had. The work wasn't easy, but it was honest, and that honesty brought her a peace that money never could. One evening, as she sat with her mother at the kitchen table, sipping tea, Maya felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Her hands were rough from the constant work, but she couldn't remember the last time she had felt so sure of herself. The future still held its uncertainties, but for the first time in a long time, Maya wasn't afraid of them. She knew she could handle whatever came her way. And that was enough. A few weeks later, Maya's phone buzzed with a message. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw it was from Gabriel. She hadn't heard from him in weeks, and though she'd hoped his persistence had finally faded, there it was, an unread message with his name at the top. "Last chance, Maya. Don't let this opportunity slip away. The offer is still on the table, but it won't be for long. Let me know if you're ready to take control of your future." Maya stared at the words for a long time, the familiar sense of pressure rising in her chest. But this time, there was no fear, no uncertainty, just a quiet, firm sense of confidence that hadn't been there before. Gabriel's words, once so alluring, now seemed hollow and distant. His promises of security, the false sense of control he offered, were no longer tempting. She sat down at her small kitchen table, taking a deep breath. Her hands, calloused from months of hard work, hovered over the keyboard as she typed her reply. "I'm making my own path, Gabriel. No thanks." She pressed send. For the first time in what felt like forever, Maya felt in control. It wasn't that the future was suddenly easy or certain. She still faced the challenges of paying bills, caring for her mother, and keeping everything afloat. But the difference now was that she had chosen her path. She had chosen the hard road, the road that required patience and persistence, but one that she could walk with her head held high. Maya smiled as she sat back in her chair, the weight that had once burdened her shoulders lifting slightly. She wasn't afraid anymore. She knew that whatever came her way, she could handle it, and that knowledge gave her a peace she had never known before. Months passed, and Maya's life began to take shape in ways she hadn't imagined. The small, steady work she had found began to lead to more opportunities. Her part-time job at the restaurant had expanded into more consistent hours, and she had built a rapport with her employer. She also found other ways to help her community, assisting with local charity events and offering help to those who needed it. The work wasn't glamorous, but it filled her with a sense of purpose. One day, after a particularly long shift, Maya was walking home when she received a call. It was a small medical clinic she had applied to months earlier for a caregiver position. The phone call confirmed they had an opening and were offering her a part-time position taking care of an elderly woman in need of assistance. The pay wasn't much, but it was exactly what Maya needed. More importantly, it was a step back into the field she had once loved, the medical field. When Maya hung up the phone, she stood still on the sidewalk, her heart swelling with gratitude. This was the kind of job she had dreamed of when she had first trained as a nurse. It wasn't high-paying, and it wasn't luxurious, but it was real. It was meaningful. That evening, she sat with her mother at the table, their modest meal in front of them. As they sipped tea, Maya's mother smiled at her, her tired eyes filled with pride. "You've done it, Maya. I'm so proud of you." Maya squeezed her mother's hand, her heart full. She knew her journey was far from over. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, just as it had been before. But now she had a deep sense of peace within herself. The moral compass her father had instilled in her, the lessons he had taught her about hard work, integrity, and honor, had guided her through the hardest times. Maya had learned that success wasn't always about wealth or grand achievements. It was found in the quiet moments of perseverance, in the steady rhythm of doing what was right, even when the world around you made it tempting to take shortcuts. As she sat with her mother that night, Maya felt stronger than she had in years. She had chosen to walk her own path, and though it wasn't easy, it was hers. And that was enough. She was no longer afraid of uncertainty or the road ahead. She was ready for whatever came next. With her mother by her side and her integrity intact, Maya knew that the future was wide open, and she was ready to face it, one step at a time. Maya's journey was never about the destination. It was about the path she chose to walk. In a world that often promised easy fixes and shortcuts, she found strength in the quiet moments of resilience, in the steady pursuit of honesty, and in the unshakable belief that integrity mattered more than anything else. She had faced the temptation of a quick way out, the lure of security wrapped in the guise of a wealthy offer. But she had learned something far more valuable. True strength doesn't come from external sources or fleeting opportunities. It comes from within, from the courage to stand by your values even when it's difficult, from the ability to choose the right path despite the pressure to take the easy one. With each passing day, Maya grew stronger. The weight of fear and uncertainty that had once loomed over her had faded, replaced by a quiet confidence and a sense of peace she had never known before. She knew that life would continue to challenge her, that obstacles would rise up again, but she was ready to face them, not as a woman trapped by circumstances, but as one who had learned to create her own destiny. As she sat across from her mother that evening, their modest apartment filled with the warmth of their shared strength, Maya realized that sometimes the simplest victories are the most profound. She had found her purpose, not in the promises of others, but in the hard work and determination that had always been within her. The future may have been uncertain, but Maya was no longer afraid to meet it head-on, with dignity, courage, and the unshakable belief that she was capable of anything she set her mind to. And with that, Maya smiled, knowing that she had already won the most important battle against doubt, fear, and the easy temptation of compromise. She had chosen to walk her own path, and that was all that truly mattered. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to Maya's story. I truly appreciate you following her journey from start to finish. I hope you found inspiration in her resilience, her choices, and the strength she found within herself. Stories like these are a reminder that the greatest battles are often the ones we fight within ourselves, and the quiet victories we achieve every day are what truly shape our lives. If you enjoyed this story and the journey we took together, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more inspiring content. Your support means the world to me, and it helps keep this community growing. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Once again, thank you for being here, and I can't wait to share more with you soon. Stay strong, stay true to yourself, and keep choosing the path that's right for you.